shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes, and this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world, and then shall the end come.
Tell us, when will these things be? And what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dave Robbins with Endtime Ministries, and I want to welcome you to Monday's edition of End of the Age. Irvin Baxter is at a conference for the next few days, and so I'll be joining you on the program. And one of the things we do here it's always very popular is Open Line Fridays. And everybody gets to call in and they get their questions answered, and it's really very educating to have everybody's questions answered. The only problem is that you only get about 10 to 12, maybe 15 if we're lucky, good calls. And because some of them are have to be such a detailed answer, you don't really get to answer very many questions. Well, what I'm going to try to do today is to take a lot of questions that we've gotten over the years. I get hundreds and hundreds of questions all the time, not only about Bible prophecy, but about the Bible in general. The prophecy is about 30% of the entire Bible, and then the rest of it is biblical foundational principle teaching. And so what I'm going to do today, rather than just 10 or 12 good calls, I'm going to try to answer at least 35 to 40 of the most popular questions that we've gotten in here over the past short while, and try to get through these. So if you want to grab a pencil and a piece of paper, you can write these down. And they're very good questions with great answers. And then also, if you want my notes, I've got about 65 questions, and I'm going to try to get through most of them if I can, but I've got about 65 questions here, Q&A, questions and answers, that I'll send you, drobbins@endtime.com. And many of you have emailed me over the years. Email me, I'll send you a copy of the notes, and it's really neat because it helps answer a lot of questions you might have. A lot of times when we're doing the program, I've had people say, man, it feels like I'm drinking from a fire hose because you're throwing so much information at me that I can't get it all. You might be driving or working on a job site or maybe at a school, and you can't really write it down or catch it all because you're doing something else. But if you email me, drobbins@endtime.com, I'll send you all of this, and it's really, really helpful. So throughout the course of the program today, Q&A session, okay? So I'm going to start right off, and I'm just going to go right down the list because there's so many of these, and they're very helpful. They help me out in answering them. I had to research a few of them, and so I want to help you out by answering many of these questions today. So the first question is, the Bible prophesies that the Antichrist will implement a global numbering system. So if it's prophesied and there's nothing we can do about it, why do you guys always try to stop it? Well, in Revelation chapter 13, verses 1 through 2, it gives us a list of nations that will be involved in the world government. Thankfully, the United States is not included in that list. We're not included in a world governing body. So this leaves us with considerable reason to believe that the United States will not conform to the New World Order, which is why we resist a numbering system or a national ID here in America. It gives us hope that, hey, we're going to someday pull out of the United Nations and stand with Israel all the way to the end, and we're going to fight against the Antichrist. We're not going to be part of that one world government. So we fight a national ID system, which is trying to pull us into that one world governing body. We fight against that. We resist a national ID, and of course they've tried many ways over the years to institute a national ID here in the United States. And Endtime Ministries, we started to put it in our magazine, a lot of different things. And we've worked with other places called the Constitutional Alliance. A lot of different places have resisted that. And up to this point, it's not been implemented here in America. They're not going to stop trying to implement it, but that doesn't mean that they'll get it fully implemented here. So we resist because we don't see the United States mentioned in that world governing body just prior to the second coming of Jesus Christ. The second question, what do the three ribs found in the bear's mouth symbolize in Daniel 7:5? You know, in Daniel chapter 7, the bear represents modern day Russia. And the Bible says that there was a bear and it had three ribs in the mouth of it. Well, at this point, it's purely speculation because we don't know for sure, but there are two possible sets of nations that have actually been bones of contention between themselves and Russia or the bear over the years. The number one is the Baltic nations, and that's the countries of Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. And look at the bones of contention that they are today between Russia having a military buildup on the edge of Europe and on their western border, and the NATO military buildup. A lot of that has to do with what happened last year in Crimea, but they're trying to protect these Baltic nations, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. And then there's also the bones of contention between Russia and China. And those were the countries of Manchuria, Xinjiang, and Mongolia. They've been bones of contention between Russia and China for years. So those are the two ways that we speculate that might be bones of contention, the two areas or the two sets of countries that might be bones of contention with Russia in the last days. The next question is, why do you teach that the second trumpet has already occurred? I've never seen a mountain burning with fire and cast into the sea. Well, you must understand that the mountain burning with fire, this is John seeing a vision 2,000 years ago. So the mountain burning with fire and cast into the sea in Revelation chapter 8, verse 8, it's John's description of an atomic bomb that was dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki during World War II. So with this event, along with many other proofs that we have, it leads us to believe that the World War II was the second trumpet, and that a mountain burning with fire or an atomic bomb is what John would have saw in a vision 2,000 years ago, and he was describing it the best way he could. He said, I saw a mountain burning with fire and cast into the sea. He was seeing an atomic bomb 2,000 years ago. The next question. I recently heard someone teach that America is going to be destroyed by the wrath of God because of the sinful acts that we condone here, the legalization of same-sex marriage and different things. However, you guys teach that Israel will be protected by the eagle or the United States in the end time. So, what's up? Will the U.S. be punished? And if so, how will the U.S. protect Israel? Well, it is true that if America continues to condone sin, we could face the judgments of God. That's very, very true. However, the Bible does not say, like I said before, the Bible doesn't say that the U.S. will be destroyed. So that's a false teaching. Revelation chapter 12:14 tells us that during the Great Tribulation, that Israel, which is the woman in Revelation 12, is carried away on the wings of a great eagle where she is protected. Well, we tend to believe that the eagle symbolizes America in this chapter and that we will defend Israel all the way to the end. So America is not going to be destroyed. The wrath of God could come upon us because of some of the things we're doing, but we're not going to be destroyed. Could we sustain casualties in the Sixth Trumpet War? Yeah, we absolutely could. But we're not going to be destroyed because there will be eagle's wings protecting Israel all the way to the end. Next question. Since the Antichrist will confirm the covenant with many, according to Daniel 9:27, does he have to be revealed first to do that? Well, actually, no. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 3 and 4, it states that the Antichrist will be revealed at the abomination of desolation, which occurs 3.5 years after the peace agreement is signed. So it appears that the Antichrist will be part of a coalition of leaders that will get a peace agreement signed at the beginning of the 7-year period, but he will not be revealed for his true identity and who he is until the abomination of desolation, which is 3.5 years after that. So if you understand what's going on right now, Netanyahu and Egypt, Sisi were going to meet together to talk about possibly coming up and meeting with about a peace agreement and some different things that they were wanting to do. But we found out recently that Tony Blair set up that arrangement between them. And Tony Blair, of course, up until recently was working with the Middle East Quartet. And so we know that there are people working behind the scenes to set all this stuff up. So there's going to be a peace agreement signed that starts the final 7 years, but it will just be one of the individuals that's involved in getting that peace agreement signed. But the Bible says that the Antichrist is not revealed. We won't be able to know 100% who he is until the abomination of desolation occurs, where the Antichrist will stand in a rebuilt Jewish temple and proclaim to be God. That's 3.5 years after the beginning of the final 7 years, halfway through that final 7-year period. Moving on, does World War III happen before the Great Tribulation, or is it part of the Great Tribulation? Well, if you understand the 7 trumpets prophecy found in the Revelation, they start at Revelation 8:2 and they run through Revelation 11:19, the 7 trumpets in the book of Revelation. Those 7 trumpets are written in chronological order. The 6th trumpet, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, is World War III. And it spans Revelation 9, verse 13 through 21. So immediately after this prophecy in Revelation 9, in Revelation 10, it immediately begins to describe the Great Tribulation period, which begins at the abomination of desolation. Jesus told us in Matthew 24, when you see the abomination of desolation, then would be great tribulation such as never been before, never shall be again. So this lets us know conclusively, since the 6 trumpet wars in Revelation 9, the tribulation begins in Revelation 10, that World War III occurs before the Great Tribulation begins. So World War III will occur before the final 3.5 years, just prior to the second coming of Jesus Christ. Next question. Who is the beast that's mentioned in Revelation chapter 13? Well, there's actually 3 beasts referred to there. Number 1, it's referring to both the Antichrist and the world government that he will reign over. For instance, in Revelation 13, 1 through 2, the beast that came up out of the sea is the world government. However, it is the Antichrist who makes war against the saints in Revelation 13, 7. And then on down the chapter, I think it's Revelation 13, 11, it mentioned another beast that comes up, and that's the false prophet. So there's actually 3 beasts mentioned in Revelation chapter 13. The world governing body, the Antichrist who will lord over or reign over that world governing body, and then the false prophet. I think it's Revelation 13, starting with verse 11. Next question. What will the mark of the beast, will the mark of the beast be a microchip? Well, the mark of the beast, it's going to attempt to give every person on earth a unique identification number, and without that number, you're not going to be able to buy or sell or function in society. So it could really be administered any number of ways. It could be an RFID chip injected under your hand or in your forehead. It could be an invisible tattoo. We've seen invisible tattoos not recognizable to the human eye until you get it under a certain light, but it's got a barcode in it. So it could be that on your hand. It could be a facial recognition photograph, or it could be a retinal scan. And it also could be biometric identifiers like your fingerprints. So fingerprints are in your hand. A retinal scan or a facial recognition photograph is of your face. That's in your forehead. So it could be any number of ways. The one thing you want to make sure that you don't ever do to make sure that you don't take the mark of the beast would be to take a mark of identification on your person anywhere. That's the number one thing you should never do. There's 2 things actually. The number one thing, don't ever take a mark of identification on your person anywhere. Whether it's a chip, whether it's a invisible tattoo, anything like that. Number 2, don't ever pledge allegiance to the Antichrist and his one world governing system. If you never do those 2 things, you'll guarantee that you never take the mark of the beast, because those 2 things will be implemented to get you to The numbering system will be implemented to get you to pledge allegiance to, thereby worshiping the beast. So those are two things you never ever want to do to make sure you don't take the mark of the beast. Next question. You guys have stated that, Endtime has stated that E-Verify could possibly be a national ID. Well, what if my employer, the ones we work for, already use this as a form of job verification? Have we accepted this national ID? Well, no, actually not. At this point, E-Verify, which is electronic verification, and what it does, it's a system that's used by select employers that if you come to work for them, they get into a governmental database and they will verify that you're approved to work. So at this point, not every company it's mandatory for them. However, once it becomes mandated by law for every business to comply nationwide, then we're getting very, very, very close to the time where it will be a fully functional national ID system. However, at this time, it's not mandatory. Some companies are doing it, some aren't doing it. So at this time, we don't see that as the mark of the beast, although it's precursors to a national database that will recognize every individual and could be used in the future to help implement the mark of the beast. Okay, so moving on. Next question. What is the difference between World War III, or the Sixth Trumpet War, and the Battle of Armageddon? Well, of course, World War III, which we refer to as the Sixth Trumpet War, mentioned in Revelation 9, 13 through 21, it occurs before the Great Tribulation. So we already talked in an earlier question. We know that since it's mentioned in Revelation 9, the tribulation starts in Revelation 10 being described there, that it's going to be two separate wars. You say, why? Because the Battle of Armageddon, found in Ezekiel 38 and 39 and Revelation 16 and 19, is the last war on earth. And that takes place at the very end of the Great Tribulation. So the Sixth Trumpet War, World War III, happens before the tribulation begins. The Battle of Armageddon happens at the very end of the Great Tribulation, which is also at the time of the second coming of Jesus Christ. They're two totally separate wars. A lot of people get them confused. When we talk about World War III in our magazine or the Sixth Trumpet War, they'll say, well, hold on, that's the Battle of Armageddon. No, it's two totally separate wars. Sixth Trumpet War, Revelation 9, and then the Battle of Armageddon mentioned in Ezekiel 38 and 39 and Revelation 16 and also again in 19. Okay, next question. I have heard you guys mention numerous times that the word mark in Revelation 13:16 means to prick. However, I didn't get that when I looked it up. So can you guys please explain? Well, sure. Here's the deal. I think you probably misunderstood what we've said. It's actually in Revelation 13:18 that states, "Here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666." So if you look it up, you understand the Old Testament was written in Hebrew and Aramaic, and the New Testament was written in Greek. So you can look back at some of these and get a little better understanding. If you look at verse 18 of chapter 13, the original Greek words for 666 are chi stigma. So according to Strong's lexicon, the root word for stigma is stizo, which means to stick, or in other words, prick. The outline for the biblical usage is a mark pricked in or branded upon the body. So Revelation chapter 13, verse 18 is where this is found, where it talks about 666, or if you look it up in the Greek, chi stigma. It's not in 16, it's verse 18. Next question. Where in the Bible does it say that there will be an animal sacrifice in the end time? Well, the answer is simple. In Revelation chapter 11, verse 1 and 2, and 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 and 2, verse 4, it foretells that Israel will build her third temple in the near future. Both of those verses. Well, once that occurs, one of the main reasons they're wanting to do that is the Jews are wanting to rebuild their temple is to resume sacrificing animals just like they did in the Old Testament. Every year they try to go up and sacrifice an animal on the Temple Mount. Yehuda Glick has been involved in a lot of that. We know this because Daniel 9:27 states that at the time of the abomination of desolation, when the Antichrist stands in the temple proclaiming to be God, that he will cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease. So obviously it's going to be impossible to cause the sacrifices to stop if they've never been implemented to begin with. So it's very clear. Once the Middle East peace agreement is signed, Israel's going to start to rebuild her third temple. They tell us we go over there twice a year now. With modern day implements and construction practices, it'll take them about a year. Once they do that, they're going to start the sacrifice up again like they did in the Old Testament. And then once that happens, the Antichrist, when he comes on the scene, 3.5 years into, after the final 7 years begins, he's going to cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease. So it lets us know without a doubt that sacrifices will be resumed just in the very near future. Next question. At the time of the abomination of desolation, I've always been taught that the people of Judea were going to run to Petra. Why do you guys tell them to go to Jerusalem? Isn't that against God's instruction? Well, actually, Jesus told the Judeans currently, and this is in Matthew 24, Jesus told the Judeans currently living in the West Bank, he said, let them which be in Judea flee, which today, modern day Judea is the West Bank. He told them to flee into the mountains, and that's in Matthew 24:16. The Bible does not say that those Jews were to flee to Petra, or that they would flee to Petra in the very near future from now. The two main reasons is that we're calling them to come to Jerusalem is, number one, which obviously Jerusalem happens to be in the mountain range, which the West Bank is located in, or on the west side of the Jordan River. The two reasons is, number one, to give them an opportunity to be born again, and also because Israel is and always will be the safest place on earth for the Jewish people. So if when the time of the abomination of desolation occurs and there starts to be a mass slaughter out in the West Bank area with those Jews or the settlers that are living under a Palestinian jurisdiction at that time, if they were to flee down to Petra, Petra can only hold about 800 people at one time. I've been there. So it would be a suicide mission for them to go down into Jordan to try to get to Petra. It would be total suicide. But the safest place on earth is for them to go straight behind them into the mountain range towards Jerusalem. And that's where they were going to inhabit during that time. And furthermore, another clue is that Zechariah 14:14 says that Judah, the people of Judah, will be fighting at Jerusalem at the time of the Battle of Armageddon. It's conclusive. It tells us that at the time of the Battle of Armageddon, the Judeans and those that live in the West Bank will be fighting in Jerusalem at the time of the Battle of Armageddon. They're not going to be hiding away down there in Petra. They're going to be fighting in Jerusalem. It's Zechariah 14:14. So there's several reasons why Israel, I know it's taught, a lot of people teach that the Judeans will flee into Petra, but there's no scriptures for any of that. We know that they will flee into Israel proper. And if you just look at a geographical map of Israel, you'll see that there's the Moab Mountains on one side of the Jordan River, and then on the side where Judea is, where the West Bank is, those are the mountains. They'll flee towards Jerusalem, not across the Jordan Valley into Jordan. That would be a suicide mission. So next question. I'll try to get a couple more in before we get to the break. Is the Islamic Mahdi the Antichrist? No, he's not. The Bible prophesies that the Antichrist will come from the Holy Roman Empire, which is the present-day European Union. I know there's a lot of people that teach that he's going to come from the Middle East region, but we can prove conclusively that the Antichrist will come from a reborn Holy Roman Empire, which is the current-day European Union. And so the Mahdi will not be the Antichrist. Next question. Why does the rapture of the church happen in the twinkling of an eye? Well, if you this is a misunderstanding among a lot of people. If you look at 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 51 through 54, it actually tells us that at the time of the rapture, the saints will be changed from mortal, or the ability to die, to immortal beings in the twinkling of an eye. So we're going to be changed. Our body will be changed from a mortal to an immortal in the twinkling of an eye, but it does not say that the rapture, the catching away, happens in the twinkling of an eye. So we'll be changed in the moment in the twinkling of an eye, but the Bible, you remember when the disciples watched Jesus until he was caught away in the clouds. Well, that's the same way we're going to go. We're going to be changed in the moment in the twinkling of an eye. When he comes back, the trumpet sounds, boom, we're changed. Then we're going to be caught away. We're going to slowly lift up from the ground, and people will see us go. So the rapture doesn't happen in the moment in the twinkling of an eye. Our transformation from a mortal being to an immortal being happens in the twinkling of an eye. You can go read the verses for yourself. Okay, I think I can get one more question in here before the break. This is the next question. Ezekiel 39 says that Israel will be burning the implements of war for 7 years after the Battle of Armageddon. Well, where does this event fit with the timeline of end-time events? Well, obviously this event's found in Ezekiel 39, verse 9, and it takes place after the Battle of Armageddon. So you understand that there will be people that live into the millennial reign. Israel, the people that are saved, the Bible says at the time of the Battle of Armageddon and the second coming of Jesus Christ, all of Israel will be saved at that time. Those individuals will live into the 1,000-year millennial reign, and they will be cleaning up the implements of war for 7 years during that time. So I'm going to be finishing out the program answering many, many more questions, and I know that some of you don't get the whole program on the radio. If you want to listen to the rest of the program, go to endtime.com or email me, drobbins@endtime.com, and I'll send you all of the questions and answers so you can get all of them. I know some of you are writing them. Send me an email.
When current events are found in Bible prophecy, it's astonishing. At Endtime Ministries, we are seeing them unfold every day, and so can you. We've put together a current events in Bible prophecy package for anyone who wants to understand like never before. Irvin Baxter and his dedicated staff have spent hundreds of hours of research and study, and in doing so have discovered that current events in Bible prophecy are telling the same story. These 13 DVDs will prepare you to be ready in this extraordinary time that God has destined you to live. Call 1-800-ENDTIME or go to endtime.com and save over 20% when you buy the current events in Bible prophecy package.
All my life I have heard the statement, nobody's perfect. But one day Hebrews 10:14 caught my attention. It says, "For by one offering he hath perfected forever them that are sanctified." I attempted to reconcile this statement with what I had viewed as the many imperfections in myself. Could it be that there are human beings on this earth that God considers perfect? In You Are Perfect, Irvin Baxter explains what it means to be sanctified and why God sees those that are sanctified as perfect. This teaching has given people peace and security in their walk with God because of new understanding of how God sees them. This lesson is available on DVD, CD, in printed format, or even digital download. To tell you not what's wrong with you, but what's right with you. You are perfect. Call 1-800-ENDTIME or go to endtime.com to get yours today.
If your radio station only carries the first 30 minutes of End of the Age, go to endtime.com to continue to listen to today's broadcast.
Well, welcome back, everybody. And I know that a lot of times we'll do an open line, and I may start doing them here in the near future. I know Irvin's wanting me to start doing that because I answer a lot of our questions that come in here every day on the phone and via email, hundreds of questions. And so I love doing open line and having interaction, but when we do an open line, you only get about 10, 12, maybe 15 calls, and they're great calls, and we need to do that. But I wanted to see if I could answer 35 or 40, maybe 45 questions just in a short period of time. And these are, we get these all the time, and they're great questions, and they need to be answered. And so I wanted to get as many as I could done today on the program to try to help everybody out. So because everybody can glean from somebody else's question. You might have even thought, man, I never even thought to ask that. But I've really got an education over the years in your sending your questions in, and I thought, man, I've got to do some research. That's a great question, and it really helped me in my education. So I thought I might bring a bunch of these and get as many as I could done on today's program because they're such awesome questions, and they really help in our education of not just prophecy, but prophecy and the different parts of the Bible, the other 60-some%, which is biblical foundational principles. So we'll try to get some of those before we're over with. So moving right along, the next question. My father just received his new debit card from the Bank of America. The information that came in with it says, enjoy your new card with chip technology at no additional cost. Is this the mark of the beast? Well, as many of you know, we've all got new debit cards with chips in them. So even though we see these types of procedures as precursors to the mark of the beast, this is simply not it. I know that I've read on my credit union's website that chip technology is moving towards being the security standard in the United States in the near future. So we've seen these as precursors to the mark of the beast. And you remember that was not mandatory. I simply got my new card in the mail and said, here you are. Your card's going to expire in 30 days. Thank you very much. There was no, I wasn't asked if I could get a new card. They simply sent me one. And so if I wanted to get access to my money, I had to use the card. So this is not seen, we see it as precursors to the mark of the beast, but it's not the mark of the beast yet. As long as an individual does not put, again, a mark of identification, and we'll talk about that a lot because it's very important. As long as an individual does not put a mark of identification on their person and never pledges allegiance to the Antichrist and his one world governing system, they will not take the mark of the beast. So just because you get a card with a chip in it, it does not mean you've taken the mark of the beast. I got a lot of calls on that when this stuff was coming around. It doesn't. So that's why you always need to remember the two things to make sure that you don't take the mark of the beast. Never do both of those things. Never take a mark of identification on your person anywhere, and never pledge allegiance to the Antichrist and his one world governing system, and that will guarantee you'll never take the mark of the beast. Okay, next question. Where does the Bible say that the Antichrist will sign a peace agreement that will start a final 7-year period? Okay. It's Daniel 9:27, and this is the NIV version. Most of the stuff we put out of here is New King James, almost 99.9%. But if one of the other versions is a little more explanatory and doesn't retract from anything or detract from anything, then I'll read from another version. So I'll tell you right up front, this is the NIV. Most everything we put out, King James Version, this is the NIV version because it really helps. And it states, He will confirm a covenant with many for 1/7. Well, the He in this verse is the Antichrist. You know that because Daniel 11:21 and 22 and Daniel 11:31 let us know that the He here is the Antichrist. Number two, the covenant that is referring to in Daniel 7 is referring to God's promise of the Holy Land to Abraham through the lineage of his son Isaac. That's found in Genesis 15:18 and Genesis 17:21. So we know what the confirmation of the covenant, we know what the covenant is. It's Israel's right to exist in the promised land, and that promise was given to Abraham all the way back in Genesis. Number three, the 7 is a 7-year period. How do we know? Well, in Daniel 9:27, it states that the event called the abomination of desolation would occur in the middle of the last 7 or the last 7-year period. So if we can tell how long the last half of the 7-year period is, then all we have to do is multiply by 2 to know how long the full 7 is. So that's easy enough. Jesus told His disciples in Matthew 24:15 through 21 that the abomination of desolation would start the Great Tribulation. Well, if there's 6 different scriptures that say the Great Tribulation lasts 3 1/2 years. And remember, Jesus said that would begin at the middle of the final 7-year period. So the 6 scriptures that let us know that the tribulation is 3.5 years is Daniel 7:25, Revelation 13:5, Daniel 12:7, Revelation 11:2, Revelation 11:3, and Revelation 12:14. Sometimes it refers to that span of time as time times and half a time. Sometimes it's 42 months. Sometimes it's 1,260 days. But every time it's referring to the Great Tribulation, it's that final 3.5-year period. So if the last half of the last 7 is 3.5 years, multiply that by 2, then the first half is 3.5 years, resulting in a 7-year period. So we know from Daniel 9:27 that the Antichrist will confirm a covenant for a final 7-year period. Next question. Is it possible that when 1/3 of mankind is killed in the 6th trumpet war, that the United States could be affected? Well, absolutely. The Bible prophesies that the war will emanate from the Middle East region. The Bible says that loose the 4 angels which are bound in the great river Euphrates. The Euphrates is housed in Turkey, Syria, Iraq, and Iran. So we know it's going to come out of that Middle East region right there. Well, since America is involved in almost all Middle Eastern conflicts, we've got our hands in everything, it's highly unlikely that we would escape unscathed once the 6th trumpet war occurs. So it'll start in the Middle East region, but we know that it's going to end up affecting a lot of nations around the world. You're talking about killing 1/3 of the world's population. So to think that the United States, who's highly involved in everything going on over there, could totally escape unscathed, it's highly unlikely. Okay, moving on. When do you believe that the war mentioned in Ezekiel 38 will occur? Well, the war mentioned in Ezekiel 38 and 39 is the exact same war as the Battle of Armageddon. And of course, this takes place just after the 3.5 year tribulation period found in Revelation 16:16. So when you look at it, if you go read the account of Ezekiel 38 and 39, and then read Revelation 16, that account, and Revelation 19, in Ezekiel 39 and Revelation 19, it gives an account that at these battles, it's the same battle, but in the one Ezekiel saw, the vision he saw, and in the vision that John saw, that God gathers the fowls of the air to come and feast on the kings, captains, and mighty men. That only happens one time. It's in the near future, and it's at the Battle of Armageddon. Go read both accounts, Ezekiel chapter 38 and 39, and read Revelation chapter 19 at the very end, and you'll see what I'm saying. The last 6 or 8 verses there. Next question. What happened to the final implementation date of the Real ID Act on January 15th, 2013, way back? What happened to all that? You guys, we've been talking about this for years. Well, the deadline has been deferred many times. It was originally signed in May of 2005, but it's been postponed many times, all the way up until 2015 recently. And then due to the fact that only a few states were Real ID compliant, then it's been jumped forward to 2015 and then 2017, and now it has a final implementation date. It's being rolled out in phases right now with a final implementation date in the year 2020. So because we've resisted the national ID, which the Real ID Act signed into law by President Bush, like I said, in 2005, it turns our driver's license into a national ID card. But because we've resisted it all these years, it's been pushed forward. They kept kicking the can down the road to where they're saying now the final implementation date is in the year 2020. So we'll see what happens between now and there. A lot of stuff could happen. We could maybe get a president in there that doesn't want anything to do with the national ID, which is what we're praying for, but we'll have to see how everything what happens in November. Next question. I have read that the 3rd temple doesn't actually have to be completed to fulfill the prophecy of the abomination of desolation. An article stated that once a cornerstone for the temple is set, then the measurements will be made to build an altar, and the altar will actually be used for sacrifices as the temple is being built. This means that the temple would not need to be completely built before the Antichrist can declare himself the Messiah. Is this true? Well, 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 verse 4 states that the Antichrist, who opposeth and exalteth himself above all that is called God or that is worshipped, so that he as God sitteth in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. So it's very clear that the Antichrist will sit in a rebuilt Jewish temple, and obviously it's not going to be possible if there's no temple there. So no, that's not possible. I've seen the cornerstones for the temple. They actually already have them, and we take our groups there every year, so I've seen them, but they're not going to simply set them up on the Temple Mount and then resume sacrifices. There's a lot of things that have to go into play. They're going to rebuild a temple. They're going to have the brazen altar, the laver. There's a lot of rituals that they want to go through. Once all that's completed, then they will resume the sacrifices. Next question. How can we avoid taking the mark of the beast? Well, I've already went over some of this previously, but the answer is simple. The mark of the beast is, if you don't know by now, is mentioned in Revelation chapter 13, verse 16 through 18. And it's a global numbering system that will be used by the Antichrist to economically sanction individuals in an effort to force them to worship or pledge allegiance to him and his one world governing body. Revelation 14, 9 through 11 tells us that anyone who participates in this system will spend eternity in the lake of fire. So there are, again, I'm going to go over it again, there are two things that a person should never do in order to guarantee they don't take the mark of the beast. Never take a mark of identification on your person, which could be, an RFID chip, an invisible tattoo, etc. And never pledge allegiance to or worship any world leader along with their global governing system. Most importantly, Revelation 13:8 tells us, and all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him, whose names are not written in the Lamb's book of life, slain from the foundation of the world. Each of us must make sure that our name is written in the Lamb's book of life. This happens, of course, when we're born again. If you don't know how to be born again, email me, drobbins@endtime.com. I'll send you a free tract. What do you mean born again? Or go on our website and you can read it. So it's absolutely critical that you understand. We say, well, why do you keep going over this? Because there's coming a time in the near future where you're going to be asked to be part of this mark of the beast system. And you can't do it. Everybody who does that will spend eternity in the lake of fire. So you absolutely cannot comply with that at all in any form. No mark of identification on your person, and never pledge allegiance to the Antichrist or his world governing system.
One day I was listening to End of the Age, much like you are now, when a commercial came on about the salvation package. It's a set of 4 DVDs in which Irvin teaches about topics like Nicodemus' question to Jesus, "What must I do to be born again?" I remember Irvin said in the commercial, "If you don't love the truth, don't get this because it will make you mad." Well, I was hungry for the truth, so I did get it, and I am so glad I did. I'd been studying the Bible for many years, but learned there was more in the scriptures about what it means to be born again. When the disciples came to Jesus and asked, "What will be the sign of your coming and the end of the age?" Jesus said, "Take heed of false teaching, for many will come in my name and deceive many." Now I know what Jesus was talking about when he made that statement, and I won't be deceived. The salvation package changed my life and my eternity. I'm so thankful for that commercial I heard. That's why today I wanted to record one too, for someone out there listening, searching for the truth. You will find it in the salvation package. Get the 4 DVD set for $65 or the individual DVDs for $20 each.
Well, welcome back, everybody. And I hope you're enjoying this as much as I am. I love going through all these questions because they really help in my education. I could throw all kinds of facts and figures at you and tell you about what's going on overseas and keep you up on the news. which we love to do, and we do it on a daily basis. But until you understand some of these things and get your questions answered, I've talked to people who we've had an open line Friday, and I'll be sitting in there at my desk and they'll call me and say, I didn't want to call in the radio, but I wanted to ask a question. And I love answering the questions for everybody because it helps in both of our education. Sometimes I'll sit right there on the phone and say, hold on a minute, let me look something up. And I'll look it up and we'll go over together and we'll learn what it means together. It's so neat. So consequently, I know that a lot of you have questions that you've never either been able to because you're working or something. You've never been able to call in on an open line Friday. And so I know that a lot of you have emailed me your questions, and I wanted to go over this because these questions and the answers can help educate so many people about what's coming up in the near future. And remember, I'm not even going to get, I had 65 questions. I'm not even going to get half of them done because there's so much information here. So if you email me, drobbins@endtime.com, I'll send you the whole thing. And you can have all the Q&A. And I'd almost be tempted to finish it tomorrow because it helps in your education as we go along. So let's move right along, and I'll get as many as I can done by the end of the program in this last segment. Next question, how can you prove that there will be a world government in the last days? Well, the prophecies of a world government are found in many places in Scripture. The most prominent place is Revelation chapter 13, and verses 3 and 7. And then verse 7 states that power will be given to the Antichrist over all kindreds, tongues, and nations. And then verse 3 says that all the world wondered after the beast. So another prominent prophecy. So we know that from those scriptures right there, all the tongues, all the nations, everybody's going to follow after this world governing body. Another prominent prophecy about the world government, Daniel chapter 7, where it tells of a world governing system ruled by the Antichrist. And then verse 23 states, the fourth beast shall be the fourth kingdom upon the earth, which shall be diverse from all kingdoms and shall devour the whole earth and shall tread it down and break it in pieces. So the prophecy then states that this world government will rule the world until the second coming of Jesus Christ. And that's Daniel 7:22. So we know that there's going to be an international system, a world governing body that the Antichrist will rule over, and it will govern the nations of the earth. Now, obviously, you and I both know, if you've followed this program at all, that the country of Jordan will escape out of his hand, the country of Israel, and we believe that the United States will as well. And I could prove that. I don't really have time. I could prove that scripturally. We'll do it on future programs. But those three nations we know for sure. There will be nations that are in battles with the Antichrist all the way to the end. And so I'm obviously extremely thankful for that. Next question. Do you guys think that the Antichrist will be revealed and in power before or after the implementation of the mark of the beast? Well, he's going to be in power before the implementation. The Antichrist has to be revealed and in power prior to the implementation of the mark of the beast. We know this because a person will have to worship the beast or his image in order to receive the mark. So you can't do that unless the Antichrist comes to power, he's ruling over that one world system, and then you pledge your allegiance to him. That's not possible. That's part of taking the mark of the beast. That's not possible unless the Antichrist is revealed. So the Antichrist has to be revealed and in power prior to the implementation of the mark of the beast. Next question. Who will be persecuted during the tribulation period? Well, anyone who is not willing to worship or pledge allegiance to the Antichrist and his world government, world religion, or the global economic system, if you say, I ain't taking part of the mark of the beast, they'll be persecuted during the final 3.5 years before the second coming of Jesus Christ. It's also known as the Great Tribulation. So it's very key that you understand that anyone who does not want to comply with the Antichrist and his world governing system, they'll be persecuted during the Great Tribulation. But there's also, to keep it just from being a time of doom and gloom, the Christians will be having great revival during that time. We can prove conclusively there will be times of revival during the Great Tribulation. Just like when the apostles in the New Testament, they functioned under the reign of a world governing body. Rome ruled the world during that time, but they had great revivals. The same way we're going to be. There's going to be a world governing body, but we're going to be having great revivals during that time. So it's going to be an awesome time for us. We don't see it as a downer. I see it as a great time to win the world. Next question. Why do people want to make war? There's always so much war and conflict going on. Well, it's simple. If you look at James chapter 4, verse 1, it states, "From whence comes wars and fightings among you? Come they not hence, even from your own lusts that war in your own members?" So we know from this that that war is nothing more than the result of the lust for power by mankind. It's the lust for power and money that war results from that. There's political conflicts, there's religious conflicts, and there's economic conflicts. All of that stems from pride and desire for finances. Next question. Will World War III wipe out the entire United States? Well, the war that you are referring to is the Sixth Trumpet War, prophesied Revelation 9, 13 through 21. We call it World War III because the Bible says it will kill 1/3 of the world's population. This is over 2 billion people at this point. We're just over 7 billion. So there were only 60.2 million killed in World War I and World War II combined. The prophecy also says that this war will emanate out of the Middle East region. However, since the United States is heavily involved militarily in the Middle East, it's hard to believe that we will come through this war without sustaining some casualties. But we do not believe the United States is going to be completely wiped out. Obviously, from what we've said before and what we teach, we believe America will stand with Israel all the way to the end, according to Revelation 12:14, which states, "And to the woman, which is Israel in that chapter, there were given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness, into her place, which is Israel, where she is nourished for time, times, and half a time from the face of the serpent." So during that final 3.5 years, which is the Great Tribulation period, Israel is going to be protected somewhat by America during that time. So we don't believe that America is going to be wiped off the face of the earth. Absolutely do not believe that. Could we sustain casualties? Absolutely. But we don't believe she's going to be wiped out. Next question. If the Jewish temple is rebuilt, how will the Jews, Christians, and Muslims be able to worship there? Well, in Daniel 9:27, it tells us that the Antichrist will sign a peace treaty between Israel and the Palestinians that will confirm Israel's right to have a homeland in the Middle East and allow for the rebuilding of the third Jewish temple. This event will start the final 7 years to the Battle of Armageddon. As a result of the peace treaty, according to Revelation 11, 1 and 2, the Temple Mount will be placed under a sharing arrangement, probably under the supervision of the United Nations or the international community, and this will allow both Jews and Gentiles the opportunity to worship simultaneously on the Temple Mount. So it's very clear. Any nation around the world, I've talked to many of our Jewish friends, and they said that the Temple Mount should be a place where everybody should come and worship, not just a select group. So it's a very simple answer to the question. Next question. Revelation 14:20 states that blood will flow to the horse bridles. Is this a literal interpretation? Well, the winepress of the wrath of God mentioned in Revelation 14, verses 19 through 20, it's referring to the Battle of Armageddon. The battle will begin in the plain of Megiddo in the north of Israel and will culminate. It'll travel all the way down the Jordan Valley and culminate at the city of Jerusalem. So from Megiddo to Jerusalem is approximately 1,600 furlongs, or about 160 miles, as it's mentioned in the prophecy. It appears to be impossible that blood would flow 5 feet deep for the entire 160 miles. It seems more likely that if this is to be taken literally, that the blood would flow that deep in the Kidron Valley where the Battle of Armageddon will culminate. Now, the Kidron Valley, also known as the Valley of Jehoshaphat, it's the small valley which is in between the Mount of Olives and the Temple Mount. There's a small valley there. The Bible says that that's where the battle will culminate And that's where they'll be fighting right there at the time of the second coming of Jesus Christ. It appears, if it's to be taken literal, that blood will flow to the horse bridles in that valley. Next question. What is the event referred to as the abomination of desolation? Well, I've covered some of it earlier on, but the abomination of desolation occurs when the Antichrist stands in a rebuilt Jewish temple and claims to be God. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 4. Next question. This person says, I have 12 years remaining on my prison sentence. What should I do as a prisoner to make sure I don't take the mark of the beast and be prepared to meet the Lord? Well, there's 3 steps. Number 1, never take a mark of identification on your person, never. Number 2, never pledge allegiance to or worship the global political leader or his world governing system in any way. Number 3, and most importantly, you need to prepare yourself and your fellow inmates spiritually by participating in the New Testament plan of salvation called being born again. Now, if you're out there and you're listening, which we've sent a lot of magazines every year into prisons and tons of material. But if you know somebody who's in prison, we have people here who work with prisoners all the time. We send free magazines, all kinds of things, which have all this information in there. But for a free copy of the brochure, What Do You Mean Born Again? To prepare yourself spiritually for the times just ahead, remember the Bible says that all would worship the beast whose name is not written in the Lamb's Book of Life. If you haven't been born again, your name's not been written in the Lamb's Book of Life. So you want to make sure you've been born again. To understand what it takes to do that, email us, call us, 1-800-Endtime, or email me, what do you mean, and ask for the What Do You Mean Born Again tract, or go to our Endtime.com and you can read it. And so, because it's very important, and believe me, we've sent this out to thousands and thousands of prisoners over the years. And I sent it out to the individual who asked this question. And so consequently, it's very, very important that you know, number 1, no mark of identification on your person, never pledge allegiance to the Antichrist and his one world governing body, and the number 1 thing would be make sure you're born again according to the New Testament plan of salvation. And if it's endtime.com, it's right down there in the middle of the page. What do you mean born again? Just click on it. So I hope that you have enjoyed this Q&A session, and as much as I have putting it together. I love these questions. I love answering them. It's really helped in my education over the years. And there's so many more questions out there. I just skimmed the surface of them. But I know it's helped me, and with me and Irvin discussing the answers to these and a lot of different things over the years. So I hope it's helped you as much as it's helped me over the years.
End of the Age is a production of Endtime Ministries. This broadcast will be available on our website, endtime.com, in the archives section. On our website, you'll also find more information about how current events are fulfilling Bible prophecy. To reach our operators, call 1-800-Endtime. That's 1-800-363-8463. Endtime Ministries is partner supported. We would like to say thank you to our partners who made this broadcast possible. To do what Matthew 24:14 said, to reach the world with the gospel of the kingdom.